Whether you are planning a C-section again or you're still on the fence and wondering about VBAC, this video is for you because a previous C-section is often what I call a cesarean trap and can lead to moms having their confidence undermined and either scheduling that repeat C-section or they fall into a multitude of traps that undermine their confidence and sabotage their attempts to have a VBAC. Hi, my name is Carly Bonderud, and this is the Cesarean Trap series where I go deep into everything that you need to know to avoid the unnecessary C-section, or in this case, an unnecessary repeat C-section, because the more C-sections you have, the more likely you're going to have complications. I'm not going to get into all of those complications here. After all, there have been a lot of birth advocates out there and educators who have already spoken on the risks of C-sections and the risks of repeat C-sections. One of the greatest sources that I could possibly direct you to is Jen Camel's VBACfacts.com. That is where I would suggest you find out the actual raw data because Jen Camel has spent a lot of time sifting through multiple studies to show moms the risks and benefits of C-section versus VBAC and to basically pull out the truth on VBAC. So if you are brand new to me and you haven't heard of me before, then let me just tell you that the Cesarean Trap series is designed in a different way than typical birth education. Typical birth education out there on cesarean and natural birth goes into the risks and benefits. It usually goes into numbers, but the thing is that's only part of what's really going on. And you can have all of the numbers, but still not be able to make sense of it. So here at Empowering Moms, I'm not teaching you what to think. I'm teaching you how to think about it. Take this as supplemental education that's going to help you sift through that data. I'm going to be referencing other masterclasses in this series. And I'm also going to be telling you who else to check out because I did go into a little bit of a research rabbit hole way back when I started as a birth advocate. And now as a birth empowerment coach and childbirth educator and author of Your Empowered Birth, I've recognized that that's only part of the story. And I used to spam moms in the mom groups with all of the links and tell them to just check out VBAC facts and just check out all of the data that had already come out on cesareans versus having a VBAC. But that didn't address what was really going on. And so with the Empowered Birth Method, I really do have a three-pronged approach that helps sift through all of the noise because you deserve to have the most beautiful and empowering experience, whether you choose a C-section or whether you do choose to go for a VBAC. The problem is the cesarean traps and the natural birth traps and the fear traps that come up. So if you are brand new to me, then you probably aren't aware of those terms. If you already know, then you don't need to go any further into the rabbit hole and you've already basically understood the assignment here. And I will be going deeper into what you need to do to spot this trap because it can be very tricky to spot it. But if you are brand new to me, then you're going to want to check out the full Cesarean Traps playlist. Go to the first video in the series and it will tell you more about cesarean traps. I would also suggest you checking out season 1, which is the Essential Tips series. That is going to help you with your baseline education because what needs to happen first is we aim for our physiological birth and then we pull back only as much as needed. If you go in with the mindset that you're going to attempt a VBAC, you may not get a VBAC. You're not attempting anything. The fact is that either your body is going to do what it's meant to do and you're going to birth your baby and you just have to get out of the way and the medical system has to get out of the way, or you at some point in your intuition say, this isn't right for me and I need to have a C-section, and that's perfectly fine. My goal is for you to come to your birth from a place of power instead of a place of fear. So what we're going to be covering inside of this video masterclass is basically I'm going to share with you some stories of some empowered moms. I'm going to share what I've seen out in the birth community of other care providers, doctors even, who have shared stories of successful VBACs versus moms who've chosen to have a repeat C-section and then later discovered that that was the right choice for them. Sometimes our intuition will tell us to do a C-section because there is something that we need to trust, and VBAC just isn't appropriate. And other times we're told to have a VBAC even when everybody around us keeps telling us that is too dangerous and we should just have a C-section. The first thing that I want you to understand is that you need to be able to trust yourself. So I'm going to be going into those stories. I'm also going to be sharing why these traps don't often get seen, where the fear is coming from in the medical community, where it's coming from in the natural birth community, why we basically need to come to our own decisions. And then I'm also going to share a little bit about some extra things that you may want to check out, resources. One of the things, as I mentioned, is VBAC Facts. You're going to want to check out everything from Jen Camel. Follow her on Instagram. Follow her on all of her channels because she's been speaking out about this for a very long time. Another one I'd suggest is Birthify. And I mean, Hensi Goer also has her list of things that she also talks about for taking charge of your birth. You need to understand your rights, Kristen Pascucci. And Rebecca Decker also has gone into extensive research. Rachel Reed is like the queen of physiological birth. So these are the ones that I typically follow. I believe that in order to really understand birth, you need to be able to look at both sides and see where they're missing it. And then also bring your own lived experiences. And I've also tested this out in the field with other clients. And my clients have had successful VBACs, even when they've had previous multiple C-sections, even when the odds have been stacked against them. And I'm going to be letting you know about additional resources that you may want to check out. I have done other videos in the past about VBAC, so you may want to check out that full collection. If you have any questions, you definitely want to reach out to me, hello@empoweringmomsbirth.com if it's urgent, if you are already pregnant. Because if you're already pregnant, you have less time than someone who has maybe had a C-section and doesn't want another one and isn't pregnant yet, but is thinking of conceiving in a little bit. So understanding the urgency, the longer you wait as somebody who's a VBAC mom, the more likely you can be tricked right from the get-go, like right from the first appointment. Your confidences can be chipped away at. So this is why with the Empowered Birth Method, I do have season 1, which is the Essential Tips series for natural birth. I suggest that every single mom who is going to have a baby, watch that series, because even if you're not sure if you want to have a natural birth because you've been scared away from it, the more you understand about true natural birth versus the natural birth perpetuated in the medical system and our culture of fear, the more you're going to be like, oh, wait a minute. I'm really scared of XYZ happening. And that's why I'm kind of not trusting my body because, you know, cesareans are major surgery. They're major abdominal surgery. And there are major complications and consequences to that. So the more C-sections you have, the more those consequences keep creeping up and the more problems can arise. Not to mention, it's not actually the best thing for your body long term. And babies that are born by C-section are also not getting exposed to the microbiome. So there's reasons why the birth community keeps saying we need to reduce the C-section rate. Yes, C-sections can be life-saving, but they can also be life-threatening for you and your baby. And they can also cause lifetime complications for you and your baby. So we need to recognize both the utility of these medical interventions, and we also need to recognize that there is beauty in nature. And when people say, I don't care how my baby comes into the world, I don't care what procedures have to be done as long as the baby's healthy, they are missing a huge piece and they are sacrificing themselves on the altar of motherhood without recognizing it. And it's built right into our culture. So even if you have said that in the past, I mean, I once said that I wanted to have a C-section and a tummy tuck and didn't want to go through natural birth. So I understand where it comes from. At the same time, we can get out of it. Okay, so that's going to be basically the structure. I'm also going to tell you about how to apply the empowered birth method. I'll do a recap on it. I'll give you some final thoughts. And then we'll basically keep moving on in the series. Sound good? Okay. So here is the reason why the trap exists and how to spot it, okay? So way back when C-sections first started to be performed, they were doing them in a way that mothers didn't survive. This was a last-ditch effort to get the baby out from a dying mother. But oftentimes, the mother just was throwaway. So they would do this in the most haphazard way possible. Sometimes the mother was already dead and the baby was dying. And so they basically said, okay, well, we're going to do this last ditch resort. You have to remember that this was before we had sanitation. This is before we understood about sterile environments. This is before we understood about surgical practices. As things progressed and surgery became more refined, mothers started surviving the process. But before they had the C-section, they had something called symphysiotomy. And symphysiotomy is essentially they wanted to be able to have the mothers have as many babies as possible. So instead of cutting the uterus, they would cut the pelvic bone, which was also the cartilage. Yes, I know. That is actually the invention of the chainsaw. That was what it was used for. It is incredibly brutal. It is a process that no woman actually wanted. There were women at one time, I'd read stories where a woman had accounted how she had had a symphysiotomy and she didn't want one. She hadn't thought that that was what was happening. She thought she was going to have a C-section. And the hospital informed her, no, you're still in labor. We cut your pubic bone because that way you'll be able to have as many kids as possible instead of limited, because they also had cut the uterus in a way before with C-sections where you wouldn't be able to have more kids and you'd be at a cap because once a cesarean, always a cesarean. The way that they used to do C-sections, yes, there was a huge risk of uterine rupture. They didn't yet know what they were doing. So you have a generation of people who had C-sections for whatever reasons, and you also have to look at how birth was being done in the hospital, with moms usually knocked out with scopolamine and Demerol, and the babies were dragged out with forceps. And obviously those drugs didn't always go well for mothers and babies, and then they would have to do a C-section. This is also where aspiration came from. So understanding the back history of C-sections. This is important to understand the back history of C-sections. Yes, they used to be incredibly dangerous. They used to be not done very often. It was like 5% of the population would get a C-section. And then as they refined this, they stopped doing episiotomies and they started doing C-sections. They also stopped attending breech births and started doing C-sections. They stopped allowing vaginal births of twins and started doing C-sections. Over the course of generations, we've gone from having C-sections being a true emergency, which is what the older generations are saying, C-sections are life-saving, to now the C-sections, you're falling into those cesarean traps. That's why this series exists. That's why I encourage you, if you are a VBAC mom, to look at the Cesarean Trap series. In fact, one of my clients, Dee Dee, name has been changed because she could go through litigation for what happened in the hospital. She had 3 previous C-sections and she wanted to have a VBAC. And so I had done a Cesarean Traps shorter version where I was basically talking about 5 traps per video. It was about a 5-video series. She binge watched on that. She binge watched on some of my older VBAC stuff. This was back in 2023. And then she decided to go ahead and hire me as her doula. And then Dee Dee ended up having her vaginal birth after 3 previous C-sections in the hospital. She needed to advocate strongly for herself, which is why I had the empowered birth method. Not many people know how to do this. It is a huge component of what I teach, and that is why my book exists. When Dee Dee came to me, the book was still a PDF, and I gave that to her as a gift. She went through it before our first call. There was also a Write Your Empowered Birth Plan mini challenge, and she went through that. If you go into the courses section of the YouTube channel, you will find some courses to go through. That is part of our self-study light group of courses. And then in addition to that, of course, Dee Dee was on calls with me. She was only working with me for 6 weeks. She had her baby. And then essentially we just did a debrief, and then every once in a while I reconnect with her. So understanding you have to know the back history of C-sections. They used to be incredibly dangerous, and they were only done for emergencies. And at that point, yes, you would need to have another C-section because of the way that things used to be done. This doesn't necessarily mean that your special scar or a classic incision that they had back then means that you automatically would have to have a C-section. This was just a mentality of the medical system because they saw a lot of moms who they'd have the C-section. They're like, well, the uterus has been scarred, so we'll just open them up again. They weren't doing VBAC. VBAC was something that started to be pushed in the 90s, where they started to say, you know what, maybe we could start allowing moms to at least do a trial of labor. So then it shifted the other way, where they're like, well, just because you had a C-section last time doesn't mean that you need a C-section this time, and we'll go ahead. But then what they also did is they were inducing moms because they didn't want the baby to get too big in case of a uterine rupture. So they were thinking, if the baby gets too big, the uterus will rupture. If the baby is in distress because of the labor contractions, we'll just do another C-section. And they also recognize that it's like, you know what? We don't want babies to get too big, so we'll induce. And they're like, you're not allowed to go certain number of days overdue. We'll induce you. But then the inductions also caused uterine ruptures. So a lot of moms don't see this. They hear uterine rupture and that scares them. They hear about you can't have a big baby and it scares them. You hear about how you have to induce and you can't go past your due date, or it's a C-section and there's cutoffs for it and it scares them. Another one is the VBAC calculator. And let me just tell you about Jenny. Jenny has had an unassisted vaginal birth after a previous C-section that was an emergency caused by an induction that was also an emergency caused by the fact that she had preeclampsia. And so with the second one, she was learning how to manage her chronic high blood pressure. She was able to also avoid preeclampsia again. And she had gestational diabetes. She was 41 years old, but she was determined to have a VBAC. And she had C-section as her backup plan. She had induction as her backup plan. Jenny was basically the high-risk mom that came to me and said, how do I take your classes? Get your book out there. We're going to co-found a program and you need to get this stuff out there. She's the one who brought in Lisa, her best friend, and then also Rebecca. And Rebecca is the one who had the home birth after 2 previous C-sections. In addition to that, we also have Claire Sherman. She is from Shine Space Parenting. And she also ended up having a home birth after a previous C-section, and she had type 1 diabetes. So there's a ripple effect that happens, whether you are watching the master classes and just doing things on your own, whether you choose to do self-study or whether you choose to work with me as a coaching client. What's going to happen is you're going to start to be able to know what to think and how to think about it, not just what to think. Because often what happens is that if you're stuck in this fear and you're getting all of this information, which I call information overwhelm, this is very common in the mom groups. You can see it if you just type in VBAC in a mom group and go and look at all of those conversations. You will see just how many ways moms get undermined in their confidence and discouraged and told that it's actually better to have a C-section, and moms that are like, I will only ever have C-sections. I'm not going to have a natural birth. I'm not even going to risk it. It's too risky. You'll see the ones where doctors will say these things. I mean, I've done a lot of videos on VBAC. This is one of my main topics because of how frustrating it is in the system. If you want to know more about what I see for VBAC moms and how to get out of the traps, definitely go and check out my starter guide. So go to empoweringmomsbirth.com/start guide, and you can follow your own adventure, but it would basically be learn about true natural birth if you don't already have that baseline education. And then I also list out all the mistakes that VBAC moms make. And it also gives you the overview. You get those positive stories of moms. I've got Rebecca's story and I've got Jenny's story in there. And essentially, it'll help you pick your path for empowered birth. And speaking of paths for empowered birth, let's now apply the empowered birth method, okay? So what you really need to know about applying the empowered birth method is I have a 3-pronged approach, especially for my VBAC moms. And it comes with getting past fear. There's so much fear when it comes to VBAC. First of all, you attempted to have your baby vaginally the first time, or maybe you even got told that it wasn't safe to have your baby vaginally, or maybe you were traumatized and scared before you even got pregnant to think, I'm scared of labor and I'd rather just have a C-section. Wherever you fell on that list, you need to first get past your fear. So what I do when I sit down with all of my clients is first we figure out why that first C-section happened or why those other C-sections happened. You need to be clear on why it happened, and not just the clinical reasons why, but also the psychological trip that you took. So inside of chapter 7 of my book, Your Empowered Birth, there's actually a whole list of questions that will help you understand the why. And if you also go and get Your Empowered Birth workshop, which is the first signature program that Jenny and I put together, it was a free workshop. Now you just put your name and email in. You go to empoweringmomsbirth.com/workshop. You also have the option if you want to upgrade, and you can get a graduation session. It's about 15 minutes of my time. So you'd basically go through the workshop in the core program, and then at any time you can just utilize that call. Before we get on that call, I'm going to be making sure that you actually need it. If you can just benefit from another resource, I'm going to send that to you, because you can basically call in that anytime. And it doesn't even have to be for the one program that you bought. It's essentially you've bought yourself a call. So because you've bought yourself a call, you can call that in with any of our products, any of our services. If you're like, it's not birth, it's business, you can still use that call. It's still there for you. Whether you're birthing a baby, birthing a business, a creative project, or a movement, Empowering Moms is here for you. The only thing is that before you get on these calls, even if you've booked them, I want to make sure you've done the work so that when we get on that call, we're basically focused. And that's for me and my coaching queens. We're very focused on helping you. We want to make sure that we left you 10 times better than when we found you. And we want to make sure that you're using those calls effectively. Otherwise, why are we spending the time when you can use that call for something else in the future? After all, it's yours. It's not, there's no limitation on when you can use it. Okay? So understanding that part of it, first of all, you need to be able to get past your fear. You need to get out of information overwhelm. Jen Camel's site is incredible for information on VBAC. And at the same time, when you're trying to sift through all of the data and your care provider is coming at you with all of their scary statistics and the outside world is coming in with all of their scary stories, it can be really hard to listen to yourself. So one of the things that I teach inside of my core program, Your Empowered Birth Workshop, and also deeper in Your Empowered Birth Academy, which is my main program, almost as good as me coaching you directly, you are able to get past that fear and come to your birth from a place of power. This is what I taught all of my VBAC moms to do. This is why Jenny went from saying, I'm never going to have another baby again. I just want to know what happened to me, to in less than a year, getting pregnant again and having her successful VBAC. So essentially in 2021, she wasn't on board at the beginning of the year. She was like, I just want to teach this with you and help others not have what happened to me. And then by the end of the year, she was pregnant and she was going through her own empowered birth journey. She gave birth to her baby in August of 2022, around the same time that I had finished the manuscript for Your Empowered Birth. And since then, she has just continued to thrive, and she's birthed her own business, Empress Birthworks. So you can go and check that out as well at empressbirthworks.com. And essentially, when you have an empowered birth, you're an empowered mom for life. No one can take your power away from you again. So with the empowered birth method, you really need to get past your fear and believe that you can birth your baby. You need to be able to believe that push comes to shove, you are going to be able to birth your baby with or without permission. If you're not in that place yet where you believe that that baby is going to come out, you will go into labor on your own, there's work that you need to do to get to that place. And the empowered birth method helps you to get to that place. So if you have any questions on that, how to get past your fear, if you'd like additional information, positive birth stories, I have a very large library of resources. There are a ton of videos on VBAC. There's a ton of videos on getting past fear. I scatter this out in every single masterclass. So you have the option of going through and getting that information, and it's there for you. And if you would like to have a targeted way of finding it, you can always reach out. hello@empoweringmomsbirth.com. If you're feeling a little bolder and you want to just put it in the comments, I do eventually read those. I do drop links, but if it's urgent, if you're already pregnant, then the best bet is to email, because then you're going to get information within 3 to 5 business days that's targeted to you. And then in addition to that, after you've gotten past your fear, you need your partner on board. This is a big problem for VBAC moms, is that their partner is scared because they were traumatized before, because labor was really long before, or maybe it didn't happen. They saw the surgery. They saw what it did to you. They know that you suffered, but also it's a path that they know. And when medical professionals keep trying to undermine the confidence because they don't trust VBAC fully, and they only trust it within certain restrictions, or they'd rather you just have a C-section, then what this does is that also comes down on your partner. So part of the empowered birth method is making sure that your partner, those fears disappear. A lot of the VBAC moms that have come to me for calls or just in my community, it's not that they're afraid of VBAC. They know they can do it. They even want to birth at home, but their partner is the wild card and they can often be the one to derail it. So then I also have calls where it's like, let me talk to your partner. I can get them to get out of your way. And, not everybody takes me up on that. The ones that do, typically, I'm able to mediate between partner and mom. And it's like, actually, now that you've expressed your fears of the hospital out loud and your partner is hearing you, because I've held that safe space, now they're more likely to agree to the home birth. In Rebecca's case, Rebecca had already expressed that she wanted to have a VBAC. Her partner had already said, okay, we can do that, and you can hire this woman to help you. And through 1 month of coaching with me, Rebecca was already like, I'm solid. I'm ready to have this baby. And I'm like, well, I mean, you have like a few more months to go before you can have this baby. And she's like, the only thing is that my partner is a little nervous now about the whole, like, it's starting to get to him. He's starting to realize as we get closer to the end that we're doing this on our own with you just on Zoom. And he's starting to freak out. I'm like, well, how about we bring him in on some calls? Because we need to get his fears out there so that he can feel comfortable. And let's also bring in the video that I bring in for all of my clients to watch, or I buy it for them because it's like nothing for me to buy it for them as part of the package. And let's just talk about that. What it really looks like, what birth really looks like, because they'd had 2 C-sections. He didn't know what he was looking at. He'd only seen the hospital labor where she had been induced. And then he'd been sleeping and she was resting, and the doctor's like, get up, Dad, we're doing a C-section. And the second time, it was more like she was trying for a VBAC, and then the hospital made something up saying that the baby was in distress when wasn't actually true, because we went through her actual notes. The thing is, you need to have your notes from your previous births to understand what was going on and what was true and what is like, wait a minute, that's not what happened. That's not what I was told that I had to go in for. They lied to me. And, this is what happens. This is actually a thing that happens. So you need to have your partner on board, because your partner is going to be your solid rock and your advocate. And then finally, if you are going to hire a care provider, because, hey, I'm not going to judge you if you choose to do a wild pregnancy. At the same time, you do want to have somebody you can trust. Should your intuition tell you that you need to go into the hospital, you do need to have that. So being able to find somebody that you can trust as your backup is also key. And within the Essential Tips series, I do talk about hiring your care provider. There is also a lot inside of the core program, Your Empowered Birth Academy, on hiring a care provider and advocating for yourself. So that's the 3-pronged approach to having your most empowered birth and being able to have your best chance to avoid an unnecessary C-section. Okay, so now that you know more about how to spot these traps and why it is like that in the first place, and you understand more about the resources that you need, and you understand the empowered birth method, let's quickly recap on what we learned. So why is it that so many people still think once a cesarean, always a cesarean? Well, that's because way back in the past, C-sections used to be incredibly dangerous. And so they'd only be done in like the most extreme of circumstances. As surgery became more refined, as practices improved, C-sections became safer for moms. But then we swung in the other direction where everybody was getting a C-section. And now there's moms that are in the VBAC community and they don't know which information to learn from. And there's also the fact that There's moms who are really determined to have a VBAC and they do all of their research in one direction, but they don't often look at the risks. And this is why Jen Camel from VBACfacts.com, she has a lot of the data, but then we run into the problem of information overwhelm. We also have a culture of fear and misinformation. So not understanding the context of the VBAC communities is how a lot of VBAC moms get lost, and they make a lot of mistakes that you don't want to make them, but at the same time, these problems happen. So in order to essentially mitigate a lot of these mistakes, if you go onto my website, empoweringmomsbirth.com/start guide, and go to the VBAC section, there are resources for VBAC moms. And one of them is a tiny little mini guide. It's called the How to Have an Empowered VBAC mini guide. And it gives you a list of the things that I essentially tell my VBAC clients when they come to me so that they do not fall into the majority of the traps. Also, binge watching the Cesarean Trap series is going to help you a lot. And when you really understand about our culture of fear, the more you see it, you won't be able to unsee it anymore. So that is essentially why I have this series. I'm going to encourage you to go back and watch the videos 3 times. A lot of my clients also binge watch these videos, or when I was really doing the birth advocacy thing and I didn't have my own library yet and I was sharing other people's stuff, I used to spam links for moms. And there were a lot of VBAC moms who said, because of the information that you were able to give me, and you were the only one saying it, because everybody else was like, no, you just have to listen to your doctor, or they were doing a lot of scare stuff and you didn't do the scare tactics. You really let me trust my own path. I had a VBAC. I never would have had a VBAC if not for you being there encouraging me. And I mean, at that point, I was only sending a few little messages and showing what I knew. So now that I have the book, Your Empowered Birth, I do encourage you to get a copy. You can just go onto Amazon and order your copy. It's really good to have a hard copy because you're able to go through it. You're able to add little sticky notes, and there's questions to ask as well. So if you are a mom who is looking to have a VBAC, you're already a seasoned mom. You'll want to go through the chapter 6 and learn where you may have missed it as a first-time mom. And it's okay that you missed it. I missed it too. We all miss it. It's built into our culture of fear. There's no shame. There's no guilt. This is just the way that the culture has immersed us in that fear. And then in addition to that, go and do chapter 7, which is how to heal and get the birth you want the next time. So going through that is going to help you. Going through the Empowered Birth Workshop is going to help you, and basically applying that Empowered Birth method. You need to get past your fear. You need to get your partner on board, and you need to be able to strongly advocate. It's a 3-pronged approach. Everything is basically 3. And even beyond birth, I believe that it's self, it's intuition, and self-care, and caring for yourself. You are not disposable. As Jenny herself has put on one of the shirts that is in my collection from Empress Birthworks, you are not disposable. And at the same time, you also need to recognize that you are the leader of your family. You need to have that connection with community and with your child and your children and your partner. It's family. You need to have that support network. And then you also need to have your creative expression. And what happens when you are suppressed in your intuition and when others aren't supporting you properly is your creative expression gets suppressed. And in the sense of birthing, your expression of birth is suppressed. And that's where the pain and the trauma and the complications come in, because you're not able to birth in your power. So recognizing all of that, now we've basically come to the end, okay? So if you found value in this, please like, share, subscribe, pay it forward, pass this on to other moms. A drop in the ocean creates ripples. Many ripples create waves, and enough waves can change the tide. Here at Empowering Moms, I'm all about changing the tide. And the thing is that all you have to do to learn more about what we do is go to empoweringmomsbirth.com/start guide. Okay. That's going to give you the overview of empowered birth. But even at the bottom, there's a part where you can go beyond birth. It's called Empowered Mom Magic. And if you sign up for our weekly newsletter, you're going to have a dose of empowered birth wisdom and empowered mom magic every single week. You'll also be subscribed to our Empowered Mom Toolkit, which is where I put all of the book bonuses, extra workbooks, things that you can go through on your own, because I believe that it's also a three-pronged approach. You watch the video or whatever you're doing. Once, you get the overview. Twice, you're getting some aha moments. The third time, you've got the basic structure, and now you're ready to implement. And the key is implementation. So again, make sure that whichever form you're taking, you answer the questions honestly in either the workbook or within the book itself. And you just keep going with Empowered Birth. If you have any questions, reach out to the team. hello@empoweringmomsbirth.com. We will get back to you within 3 to 5 business days. 1 to 2 if you're a subscriber of our newsletter, because you just hit reply to any one of our emails. And if you've also purchased our core program, Your Empowered Birth Academy, then you have even more access to us, because we really take care of our clients. We take care of our students here at Empowering Moms. I'm committed to you having an empowered birth, whether you work with me directly or not. And at the same time, if you are investing in Empowering Moms and in me, I'm also investing in you, and you're going to get 10 times better than what you put in. Okay? That's my promise to you. That's my mission. That's why I'm doing this work. I believe that moms are the way through to the future. I believe we have gifts and we deserve to be able to express those. And birth trauma sucks. And being forced into a C-section that you didn't need sucks. It takes a lot of toll on your body, and it's unnecessary, and you don't need to go through with it. So wherever you are in deciding about whether to have a VBAC or whether to have a repeat C-section, I want to make sure you're coming to this from a place of power, not a place of fear. I do have other resources on VBAC, so just put it in the comments or reach out to us, and we will redirect you to where you need to go for that information. You may also just need a little bit of encouragement. And I believe in you, Empowered Mom. I believe you can do it. Okay? So even if everybody around you is telling you that you can't do it, well, Jenny had a 15% chance of VBAC success with the VBAC calculator. She kind of proved everybody wrong, didn't she? You can do the same. So next, I'm going to be talking about multiple C-sections, because if you are a VBAC mom, that is already a hurdle. But if you have had multiple C-sections like Rebecca and Dee Dee, then there's even more challenges that come up. So I'm going to be talking about that next. So if that does apply to you, then you're going to want to check out that video as well. So thank you so much again for watching. Have a happy, empowered birth journey. Whether you're birthing a baby, a business, a creative project, a movement, an impact, or a new version of yourself, let Empowering Moms be your guide. Namaste.